What's going on? My name is 8 Bars. I've been a music producer for over 12 years. And today I'm gonna break down how I make beats that inspire artists to make deep emotional songs, just like all the ones that I made for Joe Budden. Yeah, I don't really have a better hook than that. Let's just get into it. So 9 times out of 10, whenever I make a beat like this, it's usually because I'm starting off with a melody that I have stuck in my head, which, considering how many of these types of beats I usually make, I'm not entirely sure what that says. It's probably fine. So for this beat, I started off with a piano melody and then I just built around it. Now, as far as the plugins go, I used the Terminator theme piano from Nexus. And then as far as the EQ is concerned, all I really did was cut off some of the low end to make some space for the bass. So next up, I decided to back up and layer the piano sound with 2 vocal sounds. The first one's a choir that I got from Omnisphere, and basically I just messed with the glide so that it can sound more legato. And then the next sound is a solo vocal that I got from Contact from a library called Chevenai. And here's what that sounds like. And for these sounds, as far as the effects are concerned, I added an EQ on both. And I'm basically just clearing out space for each one so that they can sound good together. And then I added some compression so the two can mesh even more. So once I got my main melody down, I felt like it needed a unique sound that was kind of ambient. So what I decided to do was I downloaded a new plugin called Vital, which is actually free, so make sure you go check that out. But I found this lead in here and it was really ambient. It sounded really unique, so I decided to lay it down. And once I laid that down, it just really brought out the emotion in the track. Now, as far as effects are concerned, I did a lot of EQing. I cut off a lot down here at the bottom, and I cut off some at the top. It's almost like a phone filter. Then the next thing I added was the J37 from Waves, and I basically just used it for saturation. I actually left the noise level up, but I made a couple more tweaks so that it wasn't like blowing out the sound. But yeah, it added some saturation and made it sound a little bit more warm. And then I have this EQ here where I'm basically just cutting out a bunch of frequencies from the other sounds. So next up, we have the drums, which is really simple in terms of the amount of sounds that I picked and as far as the patterns are concerned. So normally I'm a really big advocate for not doing too much for the drums and just picking the right drum sounds for the beat. But in this case, I kind of felt like challenging myself. So here's some quick tips you can use to make your drum sound a little bit harder. Here's what my kick sounded like before I did any processing on it. And in most cases that would be fine, but I kind of wanted it to sound a little bit dirtier. So first thing that I did was I added the decapitator. See, right off the bat, it just sounds a little bit more gritty. And then the next thing that I added was this vintage tube EQ. Now, this is actually a stock EQ that comes in Logic, but they modeled it after the Pultec EQ P1A, which is a really dope vintage EQ, especially for your kicks. And here's what it sounds like once I added that. So next up, we have the rim, which has a lot of processing on it. Here's what it sounds like dry. Then I loaded up the RC20 and I kind of tweaked the VHS preset. Next up, I have some EQ, just cutting out some low end. I threw on a limiter and I'm doing a lot of limiting on there, as you can see here. Did a little bit more EQing with the Pro Q3. And then last but not least, I did some transient shaping with the drum shaper. Once again, dry. All the plugins. And then for the hi-hat, I just added the decapitator. For the bass, I basically just layered 2 sounds. One of them is from the Matrix 12 from Arturia, and then for the low end sound, I'm basically just using the Massive. And then as far as processing is concerned, I'm fattening all of that up with the Culture Vulture, and then I'm using the Pro MB to basically take the kick and sidechain out the low end for the bass. So once I laid all of that down, the beat still sounded a little thin. And for beats like this, you kind of want them to feel more full and more emotional. So what I did was I added 2 layers of pads. The first one is from Massive, and here's what that sounds like. And then the second one I got from Omnisphere, and here's what that sounds like. And then from there, once I'm happy with all the sounds, when it comes to sequencing, what I like to do is kind of build out the beat and make it kind of feel like the beat is telling a story. So once you put everything together, here's what that sounds like. So yeah, that's looking at my process for making deep emotional rap beats for artists like Joe. As always, I hope you were able to get a couple of tips out of that you can use in your own productions. If you're an artist and you want to use that beat, I left the link in the description. If you found any of that helpful and you want to see more, consider liking and subscribing. It really is the best way for me and the algorithm to know that you want to see more. And drop a comment if you have any questions. I'll catch you next time.